Hi, I'm Jamie Steele. I've been playing saxophone for almost 20 years, and this is all of my essential knowledge in one video. The first stage of your saxophone journey, which is often overlooked, is simply just to listen. It's important to find out what type of saxophone playing you like, so you know what you'd like to aim for. My first book, The Basics of Improvising for Saxophone, has a recommended listening list consisting of lots of music that has encouraged and inspired me over the years. So what I'll do is I'll put a link in the description to it below. When you're first learning, it's important to get a teacher in person so that they can make sure you've got your hands in the right place and you're not forming any bad habits. Lots of people take lessons online now, which is totally fine once you've started, but certain things could be missed if you're facing a camera from the front, such as bad left hand placement on what we call the octave key. Whatever type of playing that you're aspiring to, whether that's classical or the modern Ibiza sax dance floor trend, it's important to get the core basics in first. I've tried skipping over this with students as I can appreciate it's a bit dull, but from experience I'm afraid it just never really works. Just get a good beginner's book and stick with it. For example, I use Andy Hampton's Saxophone Basics here in the Saxophone Shop. When you're buying your first saxophone, try and avoid buying one secondhand unless it's from a reputable shop. There could be problems with it that you won't be aware of, and then it'll be harder to play and might even put you off. Don't worry about buying the most expensive or vintage saxophone, the key thing is just to get started. I would avoid the absolute cheapest saxophones out there. It doesn't really matter too much on what type or size of saxophone you start on. Most people start on the Alto and that's totally fine. I started on the Tenor because my dad likes John Coltrane. Just pick what appeals most to you, and this could be something that listening to lots of saxophone music helps you decide. The most important aspect of producing the sound is you and then the mouthpiece, which we'll discuss soon. When you're practicing, it's best to do little and often as opposed to one big practice session at the end of the week. You're going to have bad days, so it's better to just try and push through and catch all of the good days. You might get one or more mouthpieces with your first saxophone. Pick the one with the lowest stamped number on the side, or even one without a number. This is likely to be the one with the smallest tip opening, which will be easiest for you to start on. The tip opening is how far away the reed is from the mouthpiece, and the higher the number, the more air you'll need to make a sound, so best to start small. As you progress, you'll start to notice that there's different mouthpiece types. You've got hard rubber and metal. Whatever you play is totally up to you, and I'll demonstrate the two different types now as they both have different sounds and qualities, and hopefully this will help you decide what your preference might be. Similar to the tip opening scale on mouthpieces, you also get different sizes of reeds. There's no universal standard for this, and reed sizes might differ between manufacturers. When you're starting, it's best to get a lower strength reed as they're softer and easier to play. I would recommend a Rico 1.5 regardless of which type of saxophone you're playing. So the ligature is what holds the reed onto the mouthpiece. There are many different types, but it literally doesn't matter, and this is probably me throwing away any future ligature endorsement, but as long as it holds the reed onto the mouthpiece, that's all that matters. I've literally done a gig using a rubber band before. The saxophonist Bob Reynolds has a really good video demonstrating this, which I'll link below. One more piece of advice I would give on mouthpieces is to use a mouthpiece patch and a rubber one, if possible. This protects both your teeth and the mouthpiece from long-term damage. You should also get a good neck strap. This will make playing the saxophone much comfier and mean you can practice for longer. The ones that come with saxophones in the box are usually quite poor. I really like the Sebula straps if you can afford them, or ones like this Neotech strap are really good as well. Another accessory I like to use and have road tested using and then not using are these key leaves. These are placed between certain keys when you're storing the saxophone and help it to air out, which helps prevent certain keys getting stuck. It's also worth getting a good saxophone stand, not only for the gigging musicians out there, but they're quite useful to have at home to leave your saxophone out, and then you're more likely to pick it up and practice. You'll probably also start to see different manufacturers offering different or replacement necks for your saxophones. Now, I believe that the best neck for your saxophone is the one that comes with it, as it's actually made for it. Though if you are in the position I'm in for both of my tenors, where you don't have the original neck, I really like this Boston Sax Shop saxophone neck, and they also provide reimbursement for getting your neck fitted to your saxophone by an instrument technician. On the note of technicians, it's good to find someone you trust to service and repair your saxophone, which is easier said than done as it's a bit of a niche. Generally, you want to service them once a year like a car if you're playing them a lot. For anyone in the UK, I use a brilliant technician in Edinburgh called Amy Rabson, who also has an excellent saxophone care guide for players on her website, which I'll link below. You'll probably get a case for your saxophone, and the one it comes in is usually fine, as like the neck, it will be made for your saxophone. The most important thing is making sure you have what's called a stopper, and this protects the saxophone in the case and stops it moving around. If you don't have a stopper, you can always find a wine cork that fits, another top tip from Amy. It's more shock absorbent than plastic, but it is prone to going a bit mouldy. If you're just starting out as a professional saxophone player, or you're in a new city or a new scene, here's my advice. Go to every jam session you can to build a network. You're not going to get gigs sitting in the house, sadly. In the beginning, just say yes to every gig if you can fit it in, and then you can be more selective later on. Be available and helpful. The harsh reality in the modern day is that you just need to be on your phone and reply quickly. Scoosh, who's working the camera, can attest to the fact that I'll reply quickly. And if you can't do a gig, then just be helpful and suggest some reliable depths. If you're able to, learn to drive and get a car, as your gigs will be all over the place and not necessarily in places where you can get public transport. Now, you need to decide whether a music degree or course is actually for you. Think about whether sitting in a classroom for 3 or 4 years is actually going to progress your career. Some of the best musicians I know didn't go to uni, so just think, will it actually help you getting gig opportunities that are already there anyway? One thing that folk go on about a lot, which I wouldn't worry about, is doubling on other instruments. If you're good enough on one instrument, it doesn't matter. I only even got an alto and baritone saxophone in the last couple of years, and not out of necessity either. Begin to learn your music tech. I've actually got another book on this, which I'll link down below, and we're also going to do another video on this. But in short, get yourself a microphone and don't be late for sound check. Thanks very much for watching this video, and I hope that it was useful. If you have any questions or if I've missed anything, let me know in the comments.